What you're looking for makes a big difference in what you find, or worldview matters, even when it comes to scientific research. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. Nothing in our culture so clearly demonstrates the controlling power of once settled presuppositions like how we think and talk about sexuality. This time, the topic is a new study, the largest ever done, on the relationship between genetic makeup and same-sex sexual behavior. Research finds genetic links to same-sex behavior, proclaimed the Wall Street Journal. The New York Times agreed, using this headline, "Many genes influence same-sex sexuality, not a single gay gene." But NPR, looking at the exact same study, chose a different headline, "Search for gay genes comes up short in large new study." The AP put it this way, "New genetic links to same-sex sexuality found in huge study," but Science News announced there's no evidence that a gay gene exists. The Washington Post played it more in the middle with, "There's no one gay gene, but genetics are linked to same-sex sexual behavior." Oh, and then there's the Guardian's approach, which I predict will be the settled conclusion from most media outlets within just a few days. They chose to op-ed the story, which is garnering inconsistent and even contradictory headlines, by confidently concluding gay gene theories belong in the past. Now we know sexuality is far more fluid. In other words, the science is settled on sexuality despite what any new science might tell us. Or, as Owen Jones, the author of the Guardian article, actually wrote, "While the research is interesting, it is surely irrelevant." Since the 1980s, researchers have been on a hunt for the elusive gay gene as a way to prove what was the defining argument of the early LGB movement. This was before the T was added. The argument was born this way. Of course, as early as 1989, gay advocates admitted that what was increasingly being called sexual orientation was obviously a mix of both nature and nurture. Still, it proved to not only be useful, but effective, and so it stuck. And that's what makes the reaction to this new study so interesting. Clearly, newspapers across the spectrum are clamoring for a headline that follows the instructions that they were given a couple decades ago about the biological basis of sexual orientation. What they've missed, except apparently for NPR and The Guardian, is that advocates have now moved on. Born this way is no longer a necessary talking point for the movement. The cause is won. So the fact that a study like this comes up empty-handed and proving today the very thing everyone proclaimed yesterday as being settled science will elicit only a shrug. But newspapers know the sort of abuse they'll face if they get this one wrong, and apparently so do the researchers. They couch their study in all kinds of politically correct jargon and clarifications, even consulting with science communication teams and LGBTQIA+ advocacy groups to help them communicate what they found about LGBTQIA+. The study's lead author, Andrea Ganna, was careful to say that homosexuality is, quote, "a natural part of our diversity as a species." You see how she couched that ideological presupposition in the verbiage of scientific authority? But what the study showed was unremarkable. There was no evidence of a single gay gene. There was evidence of modest to weak correlation between a combination of genetic factors and those who had reported to have had a same-sex sexual experience. And that last clarification is really important for two reasons. First, it's being assumed here that having had a same-sex sexual experience is the same as having a particular sexual orientation. And second, the same genetic combination also showed correlation for risky behavior. Hey, might the decision to have risky sexual experiences be connected to the tendency to engage in risky behavior overall? And even that tendency only has a correlation with this combination of genetic factors, which, of course, is not the same as genes causing the behavior at all. While the researchers behind the study and the media reporting on it were being so careful to couch these quite unimpressive results as previously instructed, the movement they're trying to accommodate has long since moved on. After all, they've been far more effective capturing the cultural imagination, including much of the scientific community, without needing the science to back it up. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.